Hey guys, welcome back to the Danger Planet. I'm here with a very special guest today, joining us from Corner Case, and we're going to talk all about getting started and taking your first steps in the Infinity game system. Hey guys, welcome back to Danger Planet. I'm here with a very, very special guest of the channel today, Deck from Corner Case. Deck, why don't you say hi to the internet?
Hey guys, it's me, your special guest and your best friend, Deck.
Deck has been a really good friend of the channel, honestly, since about day one. So I'm really excited to have him on. Today, specifically, we're going to be looking at the top 5 tips to start and help folks that are just getting their feet grounded in the Infinity gaming system. So today is the official top 5 tips from Corner Case on getting started on getting started with Infinity. A little preface for this. Basically, I reached out to Deck because I think a thing that his channel does really well is getting and building a really healthy community around all of the different game systems that he represents. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, Deck, I'm just starting out playing Infinity. Would you mind coming on the channel and doing a quick, like, hey, here are my top 5 best tricks for having a good time starting out in this system? And so that's what this video is really going to be aimed at. So I guess with all that into account, Mr. Deck, you want to take us through your first item on the list there?
Oh yeah, baby. Let's get into this Infinity listicle here. So I have my top 5 tips for starting Infinity. And they're gonna sound pretty broad and like esoteric at first, but I do have specific Infinity rationale per one. The first one is be patient and enjoy the ride. Does it sound like a cliche? Yes, it does. However, I have a very specific reason I'm saying be patient and enjoy the ride. So I'll start with my personal experience. You know, when I first started in Infinity, I thought I was coming from like a pretty healthy background of wargaming, like X-Wing and Warhammer and Guild Ball and Malifaux and Legion and all of these systems. So I thought, okay, this is just going to be like every other game. I'm going to start up and I kind of had that pride. And not only did I have the pride of wanting to jump in, into the deep end right away, but, I wanted to give my opponents the best game possible as early as possible, because when you're starting out, you might be slow, you're still learning. And so I was, when you're starting out, you're a little bit slow, you're still learning. And, I had all of these reasons why I wanted to jump into a full game of Infinity as soon as possible. And probably my progression was like my first game was like 100 points, my second game was 200 points, and then my third game already was 300 points, and like with all the skills and all the full rules. And in retrospect, I don't think that really served me that well, and I don't think I realized it until just 2 weeks ago. I did a demo with a new player, and I taught them a really stripped down version, actually very similar to the first mission in the Black Wind Code 1 box set, which was we just played 4 models on each side on the 2x3 foot board, and no lieutenant order, no skills, just the core game and spending orders and shooting from cover. And I thought that was actually like a really smooth transition into the game. So if you have seen my channel before, or if you look at it, you will see that I have a video that questions the validity of Code 1 as a product. And while I do stand by my point of view about that product potentially being confusing to consumers, etc., I have changed my mind about its use as a tool to ramp into the game. So take it from me, whether you're a seasoned war gamer or, you just think you're smart or you're excited because you have your new models, you painted them, assembled them, you put all love in them, it's going to take you a while to ramp into Infinity. It is front loaded with complexity. And while that once you overcome that front load of complexity, it does become very rewarding later. enjoy this time that you have when the game is still new to you, and you'll have a much longer, happier hobby journey in Infinity.
I think that's a really good point. I think having the foresight, what you just described reflects a tremendous amount of foresight and maturity in terms of approaching a game system, because it's clearly not the first game you've ever played, right? So learning to take it at a manageable speed and make sure that the people are having good experiences as they're learning, I think is something that enough people don't take into account and don't take seriously. So I think that that's a really good point. All right, Mr. Deck, what do you got for numero dos?
All right, number 2 is leave your wargaming baggage at home. And this is one, for if you're someone who's not new to wargaming, if you're coming from different systems, or even if you've been playing one system for a long time, kind of come into Infinity with an open mind. And again, I'll share an example from my experience. Again, I thought I was coming in from multiple systems. I thought, I can do this, but the game design of Infinity is so different that some of your learned behaviors from wargaming may not serve you. I'll give you a very specific example. If you, for example, are coming from a system like Malifaux, the way you activate a model, 2 AP, you spend 1 AP to walk up to a marker, you spend your second AP to interact with it. But the way the order system works in Infinity is the whole order occurs simultaneously. So what might happen in Infinity is you walk past the marker, then you ask your opponent, how do you react? Your opponent may say, oh, I have no reaction. And then in which case you say, well, no reaction. Okay, then while I was running past the marker, I actually interacted with it. And that was something that's like a fundamental part of the way activating works in Infinity that took me a long time to grasp. I think because I was kind of leaning on my previous experiences. So that's just one example about the game design, but there are plenty. For example, like whatever culture you have in your specific games community, just be open-minded that Infinity's community might be different from what you're used to. So leave your wargaming baggage at home. Be open-minded. It's going to be different, but it's going to be great.
I think that's good advice. And honestly, I would take that one step further and just say, leave your general baggage at home, not just your wargaming baggage, Why not leave the whole thing back? But I think one of the really good points that you bring up about the Infinity system that I'm starting to get exposed to is that it really, I think, to have a really, really positive Infinity experience, it kind of requires both players to be cooperative in the execution of the game, where like something you just described, right? Like, I'm running by this objective. Do you have any AROs, or do you want any responses? Anything's going on? No? Okay, well then while I was doing that, I also did this thing. I mean, that could be, if there was a malicious intent there, or if there was two people not necessarily seeing eye to eye, I think it could make it a little bit harder to execute the game. But I think what you described and making sure that you're on the same page as your opponent and having a good time kind of it leads this to being a game that really, really encourages folks to cooperate with one another and leave all their nonsense at home. You know what I mean? I think that's how you're going to have a better game of Infinity, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Mr. Deck, what do we got for number 3?
All right, number 3 is a pretty general wargaming tip, but I think it's especially important in Infinity, and that is don't let the internet echo chamber take the internet echo chamber with a grain of salt. Now, this isn't villainizing, what you see online. It's just, being a little bit more reasonable and I think mature about, a lot of people who are outspoken online are, some of them get a lot of games in. They may participate in very competitive or active metas, so especially when you're first starting out, if you just like the way something looks, a faction or a model, but maybe, certain groups may not think that it's the best in the game, things like that, take that with a grain of salt, because, is your meta even big enough for that to matter? Is your meta competitive enough for that type of thing to matter? You know, especially when you're early on, are you good enough to feel the difference in efficiency between or another, or are you just excited to play the models that you want to play? So you know, take that internet echo chamber a little bit with a grain of salt. You know, everyone has their opinion, but whatever works in your meta and whatever works for you, I think is what's most important, as long as you're having fun.
Dude, you are a paragon of mental health and stability today, my man. What a king. So yeah, obviously I totally agree with this. Deck and I have a saying that we coined yesterday, and the saying is follow your heart, not the meta.
Exactly.
And we will be making that into t-shirts and distributing it to the internet at large. So
Cop
don't
the
worry.
merch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that again, man, I think it's a really mature perspective. At the end of the day, we're playing with small plastic army men and women and non-denominational folks. And so it's really just about having fun. If you're so focused on learning the game from the ground up, playing perfectly, having all the best units immediately, that's not going to be a realistic expectation for a new system. And Deck makes a great point. Maybe only 1 or 2% of these players are grinding so aggressively at these tournaments. And when you're starting out, that shouldn't even be your goal in the first place. You should have fun. You should learn to enjoy the game system you're playing. You should enjoy the company of the new friends you're making with the game system. It shouldn't be your focus, is this shotgun 12% more efficient than this rifle? I mean, those are questions you can ask yourself when you're prepping for a really serious tournament, but I think Deck is right. I don't think that that's a helpful mindset to be in at the very initial part of learning a system like Infinity, especially a complex one. I guess that's kind of what you're saying, right, Deck?
Yep, exactly.
All right, cool. All right, take us to number 4. 4 out of 5, Mr. Deck.
Number 4 is one that I think is a little bit more Infinity specific, and I think it's because of the way the game is formatted, and that's your army will probably feel different than you expect. So I'll start with a little bit of context here, and that context is, you know, when you play a game like 40K, for example, I think that's probably the most pointed example, is when you read the rules text, you know, a stratagem or you know, an army special ability like the Red Thirst. You know, if you're playing Blood Angels, you read the rules and they got a little bit of fluff mixed in with their mechanical language. You know, instead of saying very strictly the Red Thirst means that you get like X number of attacks, you know, on the charge and blah blah blah, it'll say instead something like, when you charge in with the Blood Angels, they remember, they experience the memories of their dead Primarch in his last moments, and this drives them to attacks with such ferocity that times 5 dice when charging. You know, so it kind of helps you visualize like what your army is doing kind of narratively and what they want to do mechanically. I always kind of thought that it was weird that the fluff was mixed in with the mechanical language, but after playing playing Infinity, you know, where there is almost no fluff, it's actually just when you look at a unit profile, you see kind of a pile of keywords, you know. So instead of so when you see a unit Infinity, it'll say like mimetism -3 and parachutist and combat jump and total immunity shock. And you just have this pile of keywords, and it's kind of up to you as the audience or the consumer to kind of synthesize like, what does this pile of keywords actually mean, like my unit wants to do, and what does it mean that it's supposed to be good at? And I think because you know, Infinity is a very it's a very nuanced and deep game. You know, kind of decoding that is definitely not going to be like super straightforward for a new player. I chose my first faction, Aleph, but specifically Steel Phalanx, because, you know, I saw that Ajax model, big hammer. I was like, okay, characters and close combat, that's going to be so cool. But I didn't understand what that meant within the context of Infinity, the game, where the core game and most of the game is actually spent, you know, face-to-face roles shooting at each other from cover. And I didn't understand that, you know, close combat wasn't something that happens every game. And contextually, it kind of makes it special. And actually, the pile of keywords that a lot of my units have basically mean I don't have to play fair infinity if I don't want to. You know, I'm throwing eclipse grenades so that, you know, it can't be shot into or out of. No visual tools can see through that. When I do get into close combat, I'm pretty much automatically going to win. You know, and if I do have to take a face-to-face shooting roll, it's most of the time going to be extremely unfair, because most of the time I'm imposing -9 on my opponent just automatically. Limits as a -6 in cover. So, you know, your army will feel a lot different than what you expect it to feel like. And other people can try to tell you like what it's going to feel like, but you just have to try it for yourself. So be open-minded, pick what you like. It's probably going to feel a little bit different than you expect.
I think that's good feedback, especially in a game system as complex as Infinity. Not to say that that's bad. It's actually a reason I really enjoy Infinity, is the complexity and depth. But I think you know, saying, you know, it's going to take you a little while to get the reins on what's going on with your team, you know, and I think honestly that is, for me personally, kind of what I call like a aha moment. You know, I don't know if you ever have one of those, but like, you know, you're playing and you're like, oh, this is the reason that those skills go together, because with this combination I can like sneak around behind them or something and then make my melee attack or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm assuming you've had those aha moments, and that's like, it's like, for me, they happen in game. Like I'm a very hands-on learner, and so I am always really excited to just get my hands on the game system and try it, because even if I lose, even if I make a million mistakes, I'm still going to learn that game. And that's a perfect example of what you were describing. I like to do that with like hands-on moving models around, and every other game trying to like have a different aha moment, basically. Is how I
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
see that stuff. All right, well, it's the end of the road, Deck. So we got our last question, my man. What do you got for number 5?
Number 5 is, don't be intimidated by the hobby. Now, I'm saying this specifically because a lot of the hobby in regards to Infinity can look like hard mode. You know, nowadays you have your plastic models. Well, Infinity has metal models. You have, you know, your heavy metal paint style. You look at a GW box, and you know, they have their standardized way to paint an army, their efficient way. And if you come from Malifaux, they don't even show painted minis on the box. But when you look at an Infinity box or blister, what you see is like probably one of the best paint jobs you've seen, at least around you, or most of the time. I'll tell you from my experience, I never felt challenged to like match a GW paint job in Malifaux. I always just kind of felt creative to do whatever I wanted. But I remember getting my first round of Infinity models and thinking like, oh, am I going to be able to like hit that quality? And like, you kind of want to, because it looks so cool. But it was like the first time I felt like maybe I might not be able to, you know? So the hobby for Infinity can look a little hard mode because of those two things, the metal models and the really cool paint jobs you see all the time. But, you know, just enjoy it. It's very rewarding to see your painted models, and especially Infinity models are some of the best models around. So don't be intimidated. It's going to be fun, and your stuff is going to look great.
Yeah, just to be fair, I do think you're wrong. I think you're an excellent painter, and you could, if wanted to, I think, get up to those standards based on what I've seen in your Discord. But I agree. I've had a lot of people bring up the pewter model thing with me around Infinity, and I gotta tell you, I mean, I haven't built pewter in like 10 or 15 years, but I was building all my Hakkaslam stuff, and it was very easy to build. Frankly, it was a lot easier than a lot of these more recent resin model kits that you have to wash all the mode release off of. Then you've got tons of warping issues. You have to use like hot water and stuff to fix them. I found and again, I'm very new. I've only built like 10 Hakkaslam models at this point, but the pewter has been not bad to work with. And I don't have the problem that you have, because I don't even have the painting ability that you have. So I don't even worry about that. I just get them to tabletop plus as quick as I can, basically, and try to play. But I think these are great tips, Deck. I really appreciate you coming onto the channel, kind of walking folks through, I think, some of the things to keep I would describe a lot of the tips you gave as having fun in the hobby, keeping a healthy mindset, and putting yourself in a position so that you can grow with the community that you're trying to get involved in. You know, if I was to give spark notes of what you were saying, that's kind of what I'm taking away from what you're saying. Is that fair, I think, in terms of like the message you're trying to put
Oh
out there?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because this hobby is expensive and it's time consuming, and people who get into it can get really emotionally invested into it. So,
And
whatever is going to give you the happiest, longest hobby, that's what I'm about.
yeah, and I think that that's so core to what we're doing here, guys. I mean, I focus a ton on competitive tournament play. Sam is at his heart a spike and a tournament player. Brandon organizes tournaments and stuff, but we all agree across the board that you can't really have competitive tournament play if you don't do the blocking and tackling components correctly. And I'm so excited because I have all these new relationships with channels like Deck and channels like Defective Dice, but none of that really matters if you yourself aren't personally healthy mentally, and you're not having a good time playing the game system, and you're not enjoying the journey. I hear on the painting side of our hobby, people like Vince Venturella and Miniac and Ninjon refer to it as a painting journey when you talk about like going through the progression of getting better at painting. And I think we should always just be talking about this as effectively a gaming journey, because to me it's very similar. You're learning things about yourself, you're learning things about the game system, you're growing with the community, you're getting lots of friends. It's easily a journey in my mind. And so I'm starting that. And I'm also never letting go of follow your heart, not the meta. I'm making that into a shirt, Deck. We're doing it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So thank you guys for joining us. I'll wrap it up really quickly. Thank you, Deck, so much for coming on the channel. It was awesome to have you here, man. I really respect all the work that you do building communities for the tabletop gaming community. If you guys haven't already, please go check out Deck's channel. He does awesome coverage on Malifaux, Infinity. He's done Warcrow, which is the new upcoming fantasy game for Corvus Belli. He does a lot of other op-ed stuff that's really interesting. It's Corner Case, the Discord. Deck, anything else I'm missing that you want to let the internet people know about that you got going on?
No, I'm good for now. Thanks so much for the plug, and thanks for inviting me over. And I'm so excited for the Danger Planet family to be representing Infinity, because these smaller games really could use as much representation and ambassadorship as possible. And the Danger Planet's work for Malifaux has been just some of the best, most optimistic, consistent, and better quality content for that community. So I'm really happy and excited to see that energy and that vibe like come through for the Infinity community. I know everyone is going to love it and appreciate the work. So I'm super stoked. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for the kind words, sir. I shall aspire to live up to them. All right. Say goodbye to the internet, Deck.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye, internet.